So you hear the official reports, right? They claim a decisive victory. But what really happened when the bombs started falling on Iran's nuclear program? We're going to go way beyond the headlines here to investigate the true impact of the U.S.-Israeli strikes. And trust me, the story is far more complex than you might think.
I mean, this was the message blasted across the world, a bold, definitive claim. The point wasn't just to report on what happened, it was to project absolute strength, to send a signal that a major global threat had been, well, neutralized. A massive strategic victory, plain and simple.
But look, with these huge events, the first reports are almost never the whole story. What was actually happening on the ground? Was the program truly crippled for good, or was this just a temporary setback? Let's dig into the evidence. Okay, so to really get to the bottom of this, the first thing we have to do is look at the two completely opposite stories that came out almost immediately after the smoke cleared. So on one hand, you've got the US and Israel declaring the whole thing a massive success. They're saying they took out critical infrastructure and eliminated the top minds driving the program. But then, on the other hand, Iran's message is one of pure defiance. They insisted the attacks were a failure and that it only united the country. So, to figure out which story actually holds water, we need to look closer at the targets.
So our investigation, it doesn't start with the buildings, with the rubble. It starts with the people. A huge piece of the strategy was this coordinated assassination campaign, and it was aimed squarely at what officials called the brain trust of Iran's nuclear program. And this campaign was just surgically precise. It wasn't random at all. The strikes systematically took out 9 key figures. We're talking top scientists, engineers, and physicists. These weren't just any employees. They were the intellectual core, the very brains of the whole operation. So what was the thinking here? Well, this quote from a senior Israeli military intelligence official, someone involved in the planning, lays it out pretty clearly. The goal was to remove the knowledge itself. The idea was that by taking out this core group of experienced scientists, you could set the entire project back by years, maybe more. But this kind of precision strike, especially in a dense city, it always comes at a devastating human cost. Take Iraj Rassouli. He was a microbiologist, and he happened to live in the same apartment complex as one of the targets. He had nothing to do with the program, but the missile, well, it didn't know the difference. His family was killed while they slept. It's just a tragic, tragic reminder that behind all this strategic talk, there's always collateral damage. Okay, so that's the people, but beyond the human targets, this campaign also dropped hundreds of munitions on Iran's most important nuclear facilities. So now, let's look at the physical infrastructure, the places that got hit. All right, let's break down what we can see from things like satellite imagery and intel reports. At Isfahan, the biggest complex, it was hit by about 24 cruise missiles. The main uranium conversion facility there, that's where they prepped the raw material, was reportedly knocked almost completely out of operation. Then you've got Natanz, hit with 2 massive bunker busters. But Fordo got hit the hardest of all, with 12 of these enormous bombs aimed right at its deep underground chambers. But this is where we get to what you could call the Fordo puzzle. See, it's very deep inside a mountain for very good reason. 3D models, based on intelligence, suggest that the ventilation shafts the bombs were targeting might have a zigzag pattern. Now, why does that matter? Well, it could have deflected the bombs, meaning that even with 12 direct hits, the really important stuff, the centrifuge halls deep inside, they might have actually survived. It makes the real damage incredibly hard to confirm. And just to give you a sense of the sheer power we're talking about here, this is the MOP, the Massive Ordnance Penetrator. This thing is a 30,000-pound beast. It's one of the biggest conventional bombs the US has, and it's designed to do one thing and one thing only: smash through tons of rock and concrete to get to whatever's buried deep underground. This is what they used on Natanz and Fordo. Okay, so let's recap. We've got major damage to these key sites, right? We've got the top scientists taken out of the picture. Case closed? Well, not so fast. Just when it seems like the picture is clearing up, a brand new piece of intel comes along and complicates everything. And this is the real kicker. While all eyes were on Isfahan, Natanz, and Fordo, this other site, known as Pickaxe Mountain, was left completely untouched. And we're not talking about some small warehouse. This is another heavily fortified complex built deep inside a mountain. So the huge question is, why was it spared? And what's even more troubling is what satellite photos show is happening there right now. The entrances are being fortified even more. The piles of dirt outside are getting bigger, which means they're still tunneling inside. The purpose? Well, it's still a mystery. It could be for building new centrifuges to replace the destroyed ones, or it could be a new, even deeper site for uranium enrichment. It really suggests the program isn't just surviving, it's adapting. Now, the world's nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, they do confirm that the damage to the known sites was, and I'm quoting here, very substantial. The head of the agency, Rafael Grossi, says they know what was in those buildings. But then he adds a huge catch. His inspectors haven't been allowed back in to see the aftermath with their own eyes. And that leaves us in this really unsettling gray area. The strikes were incredibly powerful, the damage was definitely significant, but the program might already be rebuilding itself in secret. For the people who live under this constant threat, the question of what now is everything.
And in the end, maybe the truest way to measure the impact of these strikes isn't in satellite photos or intelligence reports, but in the words of the people on the ground. This quote from someone living in Tehran just captures that deep uncertainty that's left behind. The official story claimed total obliteration, but the real story is one of lingering fear and a nuclear question that is very, very far from being answered.